parents ditched me for my sister on vacation. She destroyed the trip and landed in jail. I have always known my parents had a soft spot for my younger sister, Lisa, but things really came to a head after they decided to take her on vacation instead of me. What happened next was so crazy, even I could not have predicted it. Lisa ended up ruining the whole trip, getting herself arrested, and finally, my parents saw what I've been trying to tell them for years. Let me back up a bit. I am 23 years old, and Lisa is 18. If you asked me, I would tell you straight up, she might actually be the most manipulative person I have ever met. For years, I tried to get my parents to see what was right in front of them, but they never wanted to hear it. Until now. The truth is, my relationship with my parents has always been a little rocky, and a lot of that is because of Lisa. My mom and dad treat her like she is some kind of angel sent straight from heaven. It is partly because before Lisa was born, my mom lost a baby, and it broke her heart. When Lisa came along, it was like they finally had something to hold on to again, their miracle baby. From that moment on, Lisa could do no wrong in their eyes. They made her the center of everything, and I was just sort of there. Now, do not get me wrong. When we were little, I loved Lisa. I was happy to be her big sister. But as we got older, it was like a switch flipped. Lisa had this gift, if you can call it that, for twisting every situation to her advantage. She could turn herself into the victim faster than you could blink, and my parents ate it up every single time. I will never forget my birthday when I was about 13. My grandparents gave me this beautiful old pocket watch, a real antique, and I was over the moon. My grandma even said it had been in the family for generations. Lisa, of course, was jealous right away. She kept pestering me to let her play with it, but I told her no. It was my gift, and it meant something to me. Lisa tried to get our parents to make me share, but since it came from our grandparents, there was not much they could do. That night, Lisa showed me exactly how she deals with not getting her way. She knew I was terrified of spiders, and she slipped one, a big house spider, right into my pillowcase. When I climbed into bed, I felt it crawling across my face, and I absolutely lost it. My parents ran in, worried sick. Lisa stood there, looking all sweet and concerned, acting like she had no idea what was happening. Later, when we were alone, she leaned in with this nasty little grin and flat out admitted she did it, just to teach me a lesson, like it was no big deal. That was not the only time either. When I was about 15, I finally got the nerve to invite this boy, Mark, over to watch a movie. I had a huge crush on him, and I wanted everything to go perfect. I spent forever picking out the right outfit, doing my hair, all that. The second Mark walked through the door, Lisa accidentally spilled juice all over me. She laughed her head off while I had to run upstairs and change, completely humiliated. It did not stop there. The whole time Mark was over, Lisa sat right there with us, telling every embarrassing story about me she could think of. Every time I tried to talk, she would interrupt or giggle at me. When Mark was leaving, Lisa even told him he could do better than me. He looked uncomfortable the whole night and took off pretty quick after that. That was the first time I realized just how mean Lisa could really be. I tried to tell my parents about all this stuff over the years, but they always had some excuse. Lisa is just young. She does not mean it. You need to be more patient with her. Eventually, they made it pretty clear they thought I was the problem, so I just stopped talking about it. Lisa stayed their golden child, and I felt like the odd one out. I threw myself into my schoolwork and worked hard to get into a good college, partly just to get out of that house. It felt like a breath of fresh air being away. But every time I came home for breaks, Lisa made sure I knew I was not welcome. She would ignore me at meals, cut me off when I tried to talk, and just act like I did not exist unless she was making fun of me. She also loved to mess with my stuff. Every time I went back to college, something would be broken or missing, clothes, books, makeup, all borrowed and mysteriously never returned. When I tried to complain, my parents told me I needed to be more understanding. Eventually, I started staying with friends during breaks just to avoid it. My parents seemed fine with that, saying I was just being independent. Lisa barely scraped through high school and ended up going to community college, which meant she never had to leave home. Meanwhile, I graduated and got a solid job with a multinational corporation out in San Francisco. Life was finally good, except for the rare times I called my parents or visited, which I kept to a minimum. I did not talk to Lisa at all. Then came the wake-up call. My dad had a heart attack, the kind that could have killed him. By some miracle, he made it, and when my mom called, I did not even hesitate. I booked a flight and went straight home. The doctors loaded him up with medicine and told him he had to take better care of himself. After he got out of the hospital, he got kind of sentimental. He said he wanted to spend more time together as a family, now that he realized how short life could be. I figured, why not? I could work remotely for a bit, so I stayed at their house. But the second Lisa realized I was back for more than a quick visit, she got real twitchy. I kept my distance as best I could because I figured we were both adults now, and there was no reason to fight. A few days later, over breakfast, my dad suggested we all go on a family vacation. It had been years since we went anywhere together, and he really wanted to make some memories. I was not super excited, but for him, I agreed. Lisa did not look thrilled either, but she could not exactly say no. My dad handled all the planning, flights, hotel, everything. I even cleared it with my job and let my coworkers know I would be off the grid for a while. I was actually starting to look forward to it until we got to the airport. That is when I found out my ticket had been canceled. My dad was just as confused as I was. He swore up and down he had booked and paid for my seat. But when we checked with the airline, it was only 3 tickets, one for my mom, one for my dad, and one for Lisa. Mine was mysteriously gone. As I stood there trying to figure out how the heck my ticket just vanished, I caught Lisa staring at me. That same smug look I had seen so many times before was plastered across her face. The one she always had when she managed to pull off one of her sneaky little stunts. Right then and there I knew. She was the one who canceled my ticket. She probably got into my dad's computer when no one was looking and made it disappear. I lost it. I started shouting at her right there in the middle of the airport, but she just stood there grinning like it was some kind of game. I told my parents straight out, Lisa was the one who did it. She never wanted me to come along in the first place. My mom immediately brushed me off, saying there was no way Lisa would ever do something like that. Then she turned it around on me, saying I was just jealous of Lisa, and the whole thing was probably some weird airline mistake. My dad, of course, backed her up and said the same thing. It was probably a glitch, not Lisa's fault. At that point, I knew it was hopeless. My flight was canceled, no way to fix it that day, and the next day's flights were either full or too expensive. I could have tried to make it work, but honestly, after everything, I just could not imagine flying out there alone to meet them. The idea of spending the whole trip stuck in a hotel room with Lisa, after what she had already pulled, it was not worth it. I had been hoping maybe she had grown up a little, but clearly I was wrong. My dad half-heartedly suggested maybe they could all go back home and we could reschedule, but within minutes, he was talking himself out of it. He went on about how they had not had a real vacation in years. My mom chimed in, saying I travel plenty for work anyway, so missing one little trip was not a big deal. The way they were talking, it was obvious they wanted me to tell them to just go without me, so I did. I told them to go ahead and enjoy their trip. They barely hesitated before agreeing. That part stung more than I expected. It was like they did not really care if I was there or not. It was clear this trip was going to happen, with or without me. So there I stood, watching my parents and Lisa head off to enjoy their so-called family vacation while I headed back to my place in San Francisco. I was not about to sit around in my old room, surrounded by all those memories with nobody home. I tried my best to move on from it. I still had the time off work, so I turned it into a staycation, caught up with some old friends, and buried myself in books. Every now and then, my parents would video call me during their trip, and they always seemed to be having a great time. It was hard not to notice how easily they were enjoying themselves without me. It was just another reminder of how things had always been. Me on the outside, Lisa front and center. I was not heartbroken about missing the trip itself, but the way they were acting, like I had never even been part of the plan, that stuck with me. Still, I hoped that one day they would finally see Lisa for who she really was. That day came sooner than I expected. A few days into their trip, I woke up to a whole list of missed calls from my mom. My stomach dropped. With my dad's health, I immediately thought the worst. I called her back right away. She answered, but her voice was shaking, and I could tell something was seriously wrong. She explained that over the past few days, my dad's heart medicine had been vanishing from their room. They were in a completely different country, and they had no idea if they could even get replacements there. My dad could not go without his meds. That was clear, so they tore the room apart looking for them. At some point, my mom went into Lisa's room to borrow sunscreen while Lisa was out. That is when she found them, all of my dad's missing pills stashed away in Lisa's bedside drawer. My mom said she felt sick to her stomach when she realized what was happening. She called my dad in, and together they found every single pill Lisa had taken. That was the moment, I guess, where the blinders finally came off. Their perfect miracle child had been actively putting my dad's life at risk. My mom's voice was shaking as she asked me if they should confront Lisa right then. I told her to wait until they got home. Lisa was too good at flipping the story in her favor, and if they tried to call her out while they were still stuck traveling together, it would just give her more chances to twist it all around. They needed proof. They needed time to process. But something must have happened anyway, because that night, my dad called me, and his voice was shaking worse than my mom's. Lisa was in jail. When I asked what happened, he explained that they did confront her, and she absolutely lost it. She screamed, threw things, even blamed my dad for inviting me on the trip at all. She told them flat out, if they wanted a relationship with me, she would make them pay for it. She promised she would make sure they regretted choosing me over her. Her meltdown got so bad that hotel staff called the police. When the officers showed up, Lisa refused to calm down and went off on them too. That is how she ended up getting arrested. My parents could not do anything to stop it, so they just had to let it happen. The police said she would be held for 24 hours. After that, my parents just wanted to get out of there and come home, but that was when they realized their passports and wallets were missing. It did not take much guessing to figure out Lisa had either hidden them or tossed them somewhere out of spite. Now they were stranded, broke, and scared in a foreign country with no way to leave. For the first time in my whole life, my mom sounded completely broken. She asked me to help. The same mom who had spent my entire childhood defending Lisa no matter what she did. I told her I would send money through Western Union so they could at least get by, but they had to find those passports if they wanted to come home. I was sure Lisa had not actually destroyed them. She was too obsessed with control to do something that permanent. My parents were finally seeing the truth, and they told me they were grateful I was helping them after everything. They even apologized for the way they treated me, especially leaving me out of this trip. And even though I'm trying to be the bigger person, it is hard to just let go of all those years. All that time, I spent being the outsider in my own family. So now I am left wondering, am I wrong for not being ready to forgive them just because they are finally seeing Lisa for who she really is? After all, they left me behind without a second thought, and only came asking for my help when their perfect daughter finally turned on them. Update 1. Every day now, my parents have been calling me to give me updates, and honestly, the more I hear, the more worried I get. Right after Lisa got out of jail the next day, my parents told her flat out, either she gave back their passports, or they were calling the police again. With no other option left, Lisa finally told them where she hid them. Once they were back home, my parents sat Lisa down and told her it was time to pack her things and leave the house. It was clear they had finally hit their limit. After seeing what she did on the trip, they could not deny what I had been trying to tell them for years, that their daughter was manipulative and dangerous. They were also terrified she might do something to my dad's medication again, and they just could not take that risk. That conversation turned into yet another screaming match. Lisa started throwing accusations at them, saying they always loved me more, even though anyone with eyes could see that was never the case. She told them straight up she never wanted to share them with anyone, not even me, and she blamed everything on that vacation invite. She kept shouting that they should have kicked me out of their lives years ago and that they never needed more than her. It was probably right then that my parents finally saw how deep her jealousy ran and how long it had been festering. They tried to calm her down, but it was no use. She just kept yelling and accusing. Then, in a full-blown rage, she threatened to tell anyone who would listen that my parents had neglected her as a kid. She said she would tell people they mistreated her and ruined her life. It was clear she was ready to make up any story if it meant getting her way. The part that really got to my parents was when she threatened to go to the police with her lies. That scared them more than anything, especially since they are both respected doctors in our community. The idea of their reputation getting dragged through the mud over Lisa's twisted stories left them totally shaken. In the days that followed, Lisa just kept getting worse. Once she found out my parents were calling me every day, she completely lost it. She smashed dishes, screamed at them, and started hiding their car keys so they could not get to work. It was like she was trying to make their lives as miserable as possible. Just tonight, my mom called me crying. Lisa threw a full tantrum at dinner because my mom refused to cook for her after coming home exhausted from work. Lisa flipped out, smashed some furniture, cranked her music so loud no one could sleep, and stormed off to her room. It is clear this cannot go on. My parents are completely drained, and I am genuinely scared Lisa is going to snap and do something even worse. I know if I went home right now, it would just set her off even more, so I'm staying away for now. I've been pushing my parents to meet with a lawyer so they can figure out how to legally protect themselves and finally get Lisa out of the house for good. At this point, that is the only way they're going to get any peace. Update 2. Lisa has been arrested. Turns out, all of this was only leading to what most of you probably saw coming. Lisa ended up getting arrested again. One night, things got completely out of control. Lisa grabbed a knife and came at my parents during a fight. My dad had no choice but to call the police. When they showed up, they arrested her right there on the spot and charged her with assault. With Lisa locked up for the night, my parents finally decided they could not put it off anymore. They needed to make sure she could not keep living under their roof. They met with an attorney who walked them through the process of officially evicting her. They filed the legal paperwork and gave her a formal eviction notice once she got out of jail. My parents did not want to press charges, though. They just wanted her gone. When they bailed her out, they handed her the eviction papers, all written up, all legal, everything laid out. It explained exactly why she had to leave and when she needed to be out. They wanted to make sure there was nothing Lisa could argue or twist in her favor. Then they went back to court with their lawyer to file an official lawsuit to get the eviction order finalized. That part really hurt them. It is not easy to take your own daughter to court, but they knew they were out of options. They felt guilty, but they were also terrified of what might happen if they let her stay. The court officially ruled in their favor. If Lisa does not leave on her own, the law is on their side to have her physically removed from the house. Lisa has about a week left before she has to be out. My parents are finally seeing a little light at the end of the tunnel. It has been absolute hell for them, but they are hopeful they can get some peace once she is gone. I have been in regular contact with them the whole time, and I am planning to fly them out to San Francisco once this is all over. They need a break more than anyone, and I figure spending a few weeks with me will do them some good. Plus, I want to show them they are not alone. They still have me. Update 3. My parents apologize. Since I first posted, I have gotten a ton of comments and messages. A lot of people telling me my parents need to get Lisa checked out for some kind of mental illness. I get where you're coming from, but the truth is, Lisa is an adult. Nobody can force her into therapy or an evaluation if she does not want to go. And with the way she has been acting, trying to push her into anything right now would just make her explode all over again. Like I mentioned before, my parents flew out to San Francisco for a visit just to get some space from everything. One night, while we were sitting around my dining table, they finally opened up to me. Their voices were shaking with regret. They admitted, right to my face, that they had been blind to who Lisa really was all these years. They even asked me to forgive them. My dad was the first to speak. He said he was sorry for never listening to me and for brushing off everything I tried to tell them. He said they never imagined Lisa would turn out like this. They truly believed she was just a sweet, innocent girl. My mom said the same, and her voice actually cracked when she admitted how wrong they had been. For the first time, they fully understood how much they had hurt me by putting Lisa on a pedestal and leaving me on the outside. I told them I appreciated them finally saying it out loud. I shared some of the stories they had never known about, all the things Lisa did to me over the years. They were horrified. They just sat there, stunned, realizing how much I had been through alone. They told me they were sorry for making me feel like I did not belong in my own family. It was a hard conversation, but it was the most honest one we have ever had. Update 4. The longer my parents stayed with me, the more we started to reconnect. Really reconnect in a way we never had before. We walked around the city together, had lazy lunches at little cafes, and actually just enjoyed each other's company. It felt good. I realized something during their visit. They did not just come here to get away from Lisa. They came because they wanted to rebuild our family from scratch. They needed to start over, and so did I. We have also been talking about what to do with Lisa. Right now, she is crashing at a friend's place, but my parents do not want to completely cut her off. Even after everything, they are still her parents. They feel responsible for her, even though her actions have been awful.